There she
And Dan, you're not
is.
answering your phone from Molly, she says.
Has she been trying to call me?
No, she said Dan's not answering his phone. Will you let him know that Heather's on her way?
The number I could think of off the top of my head was Molly. You want her number or do you? No, I called Molly.
I haven't missed a call from Molly.
Yeah, Molly's usually here too. I wonder what.
Any conflicts with items on the agenda this evening?
Not
No.
I.
No, okay. Everyone said no. If we had a chance to look at the, minutes from January 3rd, was there any adjustments or changes needed?
I have two comments to make regarding the minutes. Both of them are pretty simple and just, one of them has to do with Heather Pete.
Oh.
Members present, it says Heather Pett, P-E-T-T. Just to let you know that it's P-E-E-T. And the other thing, down number 4, public present, says there was no public present. There was an individual by the name of John, whose last name I do not know, but he was here in the audience.
He didn't sign the roll, so I wouldn't have no.
Yeah, I know, but I don't know how technical this needs to be, but do we need to add?
If anybody knows who he is.
Okay, can somebody come up with the last name?
Doe.
John
John
Doe.
Doe, I
Yeah,
like it.
the second, by the way. There's a long line of Does. And I could probably come up with it if I looked at past notes. I could probably come up with his last name and give it to you before I
You
leave.
know what he was here for?
Well, let's see. Let me look at the agenda and perhaps I can actually tell you that. Well, perhaps not. Again, I'd have to go back to, no. The short answer is no. And again, I guess it's not that big of a deal. I don't know how specific we have to be on all this stuff. Dan, is that too picky?
I don't think it, if he didn't sign in, I don't know if there's any official record. I don't know if it matters too
Okay.
much in the minutes.
All right.
It's not gonna change the outcome.
Right, exactly correct. And that's the only things I noticed on there. Other than, well, yeah, there was 6 o'clock and it was 6:01 on this clock, but again, that's petty. The second.
I'm glad you take such good notes. So, if that's that, will anyone make a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve January 3rd, 2024 minutes.
Second?
Second.
Okay.
All those in
All those in favor, thank you. All those,
aye.
All right.
aye. Okay. Seems it has passed. So, next on the agenda is a new commercial building at approximately 200 South, 1000 West is,
I believe
Ember is here.
Ember is here.
okay.
Hello.
Hi.
So they just want to do a new commercial building out on Hollyoak Lane. There'll be 3 separate units in it, and I sent the plans over. I'm just here to see if we can get approval.
So, let me add some flavor to this. I wish I had the map up. I guess I could do that. Basically, out on 200 South, there is a parcel that is owned by Larry Pendleton. It was a commercial subdivision. You may be familiar with where the Jim Gents buildings are. This is the corner lot closest to Parowan. It's on the corner of, like as it says there, 200 South and 100 West. It's 1 acre.
Excuse me, Dan, would it help to look at that map that's on the desk down there?
Is that what that is of?
It's just a site plan.
Okay, site plan, which we can definitely look at. I'll describe the issue, but if you wanted to go look at the site plan after I describe it, it might paint a more a better picture. So as far as getting a building permit for that, there's a couple of issues.
What's up here? Oh, sorry.
So could you hover the mouse right over? It's the one on the right.
Yeah.
Okay,
Of those 6 parcels right there along 200.
Uh-huh.
It's the one on the right, on the east
Right
side.
there.
It's that one right there.
Okay.
So Larry wants to build a building. That in and of itself makes perfect sense. It seems pretty, cut and dry. Except for he wants to build a single building and divide it into 3 different units. Nothing sounds too weird about that yet, right? But he wants to actually separate ownership and have 3 distinctly owned units with the common areas around the building being held in like a common ownership. The best way to explain that would be similar to the way a condominium works, where they can actually own the unit and share in common ownership of the other.
Dan, but they're all 3 partners in Zulu Development, so they're all 3, they all are owners of Zulu Development.
Sure.
But what they'll do is just separate so that they pay their own utilities and everything in each building.
So does he still want to have separate parcels for the separate units? Taxable parcels?
Yes, because they each wanna pay their own, they'll do the shell, and then each person will be responsible for the inside.
Right.
And have separate utilities.
The challenge with that is we don't have any code for any commercial condominium type style. I mean, if you're going to divide a lot into separate lots, you have setbacks, you can't have like a common wall. I mean, if it was a condominium for residential purposes, we would go to our condominium code and look at it. And so, Larry, he asked me about it the other day, and I said, you know, let's look into it. I talked to Larry about it. Larry's been doing homework, scratching his head, trying to figure out how we could do it within our existing code for something like this. Again, we looked at condominiums. That is for residential in residential zones. And you have to go through a process with the Planning Commission to do that. You can do things like something like this in a master plan zone. In a master plan zone, let me remind you, is basically you have to, first of all, it has to be 150 acres. And then you can actually get real creative with residential, with commercial. You can be more creative on setbacks and zoning and things like that. You basically create this separate zone where you're going to do this master plan community, and all of that goes through a process. This couldn't be a master plan zone just because it's an acre, not 150 acres anyways. So, and I wanted to bring up Larry's comments on it, but the idea was maybe this could be a PUD, a PUD, a planned unit development. A planned unit development means, I'm reading from the code, this is 14.20.020 in definitions, means the development of a tract of land as an integrated unit under single ownership or control, or if under more than one ownership, developed by the owners jointly. Planned unit development shall include multiple dwellings, multiple office buildings, or mobile home areas when developed in accordance with the provisions of this section. Normally when we think of a PUD, you think of like basically a subdivision where they want to go with tighter density, they want to have maybe narrower streets and things like this, so you work with them on that. Almost all of the code in the PUD code talks about residential, it considers residential streets, floor plans, density, and all that stuff. But it does say that it could include multiple office buildings. This, of course, is a single building, and lower down under procedure of a PUD, it does again refer to commercial development, where it says, no planned unit development, this is in L, may incorporate both mobile homes and permanent residential dwelling units, such as are typically permitted in residential zones. Commercial office uses may be included in a planned unit development. So again, it's kind of like it considers it, but it only kind of maybe barely touches on it. I don't know. This is just a challenge. We've never had it come up. You go to a larger city and you walk down a city block and you will have a store that is integrated as part of a large building, and they literally have common walls with other commercial, no setbacks. We even see that on Main Street in Cedar City. which all of that would have been put in and then grandfathered. It doesn't, our current code just doesn't really address this, so that's why I was like, we need to bring this to planning commission, we need to have them consider it. I want to read to you Larry's, comments on it with some of his thoughts and questions. And then I'd really love it if, Scott would weigh in on it. He says, I suspect the division that you describe will not leave a legal lot. I think he means because we have minimum lot sizes, right? Frontage, area, and access and easements would be issues that we would need to look at closely. The typical arrangement for this is like a business condo project. Usually this type of project has leaseholders and each leasee holds their unit and a percentage of the common area, the lot. The common area is held in common by the owners association. There's nothing for a developer to own unless he chooses to own the owners association. It is unusual for the owners association to have a tax ID number. There are decisions by the city on the number of meters required or to treat it like a PUD and have a single meter and so on. The city needs to review the proposed ownership agreement to be sure we fully understand the project. I suspect we will want Scott Burns to weigh in on this application. And it goes on and on. We've been kind of bantering this back and forth. So it's tricky to say the least. At a bare minimum, if we subdivide this into separate parcels, it would trigger our water code. Larry would need to bring us additional water. We would require, if it is a single lot, the way our new water code that is about to be adopted and that we've already started discussing, so we would hold you to that new code. If it's a single parcel, it would be a single meter. And it just depends on the meter size as to what water rights or anything. It's gonna be grandfathered to have one connection right now. If they wanna divide it into multiple parcels, regardless if we could figure this out or not, he's gonna have to bring us additional water for the additional parcels. That's one thing that is black and white in our code. I don't know if Larry wants to do that. I'm wondering if he could accomplish what he wants to do through a legal mechanism and just build the building, get a building permit, keep it in one parcel, and have an ownership agreement that he can accomplish everything he wants to with the lease.
I think they could do that.
I don't even mind the concept. I think it's fine. It's just our code is just really incompatible and kind of clunky when it comes to this, and we haven't really had a lot of business development like this. So I don't know. I don't know what the planning commission wants, but I think if Larry wants to move quickly, he ought to think about that. Having said all of that, what he wants to do is not allowed in this zone. So he probably needs to do a zone change. I stumbled upon that and I thought, how did I not get right to that at the heart of the matter? And I guess I wasn't sure what he was planning on doing. The problem there is in in the highway services zone, this is right out of our table of uses. And I think this is a problem with the Jim Gents buildings as well. You are not allowed to have, and I looked through every single one on here. I don't know exactly what he's planning on doing, but it is not permitted in the highway services zone to have professional, business, and administrative offices, with the exception of medical and dental. I don't know what Jim Gents is doing in those buildings, but if it's professional, business, and administrative offices, like an office type building, so it may be that what he wants to do specifically would be a permitted use, but we need to get over that threshold. Generally speaking, I have that on the brain. Highway services are meant to be businesses that are to assist the traveling public, and they figured that just plain office space isn't. I think that's kind of the idea. Highway service and commercial are just two brands of the same thing. They're both commercial, but we do have that table of uses, and I think that that's probably the bigger challenge. I think we could probably work through this other stuff. I would suggest he just leave it in a common ownership and legally do what he wants to do. But if he wants to do an office building, he may have to look at, updating the code. Updating the zone, doing a zone change.
Okay, I think that they could accomplish that and just do it legally, and have their own utility, their own power and everything billed separately to them. I don't think that's a problem. They've already talked to the bank and they're willing to loan each one of them, have a separate loan for each one of them. I sat on planning and zoning when we approved Jim's, and it was always, his electrical business was going to be there. They've got a lighting company, they've got...
So one of the permitted uses is inside warehouse and sales. So I think that probably fits.
Well, and one of them would be for Cody Wyant, CM built, so it would be basically a warehouse to store all his equipment, his tools, and have an office space to meet clients. Larry's and Paul's would be most likely personal use right now, maybe leased out at a later time, but just for storage.
I think if it was understood that it was inside warehouses and sales, it's permitted. Anyways.
I think that's doable. Unfortunately, Larry's out of town, and I wasn't aware of any of this, so I will talk to him and we'll,
He just grabbed me earlier this week and said, hey, what about this? And so, I think he'd either already asked to be on the agenda or not, and so I started some dialogue with Larry and with Scott. That's just gone on the last day or two.
Okay.
I haven't even had a chance to circle back with Larry on it, so.
Okay. No,
By Larry, I mean Larry
I
Pendleton.
just apologize. It's my dad, and I didn't know anything about it, so.
No, you're fine. This is weird. I mean, it's normal. This is something that happens in cities a lot, but we just don't really, like if it's gonna happen much more, we ought to probably figure it out.
Okay, so do you want me to just talk to him and get on the next agenda? Is that kind of what you're thinking?
If he is willing to set it up from an ownership perspective, the way we described, I don't think it'd have to come back to planning commission. It's a business license on a single parcel.
Okay.
He would have to get it through, we have to go through a sketch review, just a design review, which we can do internally, which we've already started. Where it got weird was when we got to this point, and I was like, yikes, let's bring that to planning commission. So
What about the zone change, Dan?
Well, if they're doing inside warehouses and sales, it doesn't need
They won't need to.
Right, that would obviously have to come back, but if he's
think-
willing to work with us on that, it wouldn't have to come back.
I think I have to agree with Heather, too. If you guys can keep it inside the three of you, then there shouldn't be a problem at all.
Okay.
Just,
And the plans are complete. I've completed the plans, so you can see the design and the floor plans and everything like that. They're right here. So, I'll talk to Larry and we'll let you guys know what we're gonna do.
okay.
Okay, hey, thank
so
you
much.
guys.
Thanks, Amber.
Thank you.
Have a great night.
So in that case, do we need to make any motions or anything with regards to that, new commercial building, or we're just tabling it and,
Yeah,
okay.
just more discussion than.
Okay, so then I guess we will move on to the next agenda item, which is the internal dwelling units follow-up from Scott Burns.
So, very interesting, Maggie, not really.
Thank you.
I spoke to 2 or 3 city attorneys across the state, and made copies of the relevant code sections
Thank you.
that Cedar City recently adopted in response to state code.
Thank you.
And, you can look at that at your leisure, I don't know where
Thank you.
go through it line by line, but essentially, public policy behind it is not well received by most go ahead.
I was just gonna say, if you're gonna stand and talk, can you
Oh.
be at the mic so people
Okay.
online?
Yep.
then just, yeah, that way people online can hear you.
is not being, all that well received across the state, in that the housing shortage in the state of Utah, the Utah legislature and the governor, apparently, it's their intent to, by the code that was passed, to try and abate and or fix that problem by allowing internal dwelling units or external dwelling units on property in a manner that was heretofore really not acceptable. A couple of city attorneys I spoke to said it's really kind of under the radar right now, but once it starts to proliferate, think of neighbors, think of your next door neighbor putting up a apartment in his backyard, her backyard. Think of neighbors who had 2 cars having an internal accessory dwelling unit, now having 5 or 6 cars parked there because they've got college students living with them. So it's an attempt, some would say, to apartmentize what has historically been homes, taking homes and turning them into apartments, whatever you want to call it, ADUs.
Short-term rental,
What's that?
short-term rental.
Short-term rentals, verbos, whatever you want to call it. It's cramming more people into a space, and so it's something that everybody's kind of trying to come to grips with. A couple of city attorneys told me, and I'll be up at the Hill tomorrow, and then more in the coming month or two, is that the biggest fear is that they're going to go even further and start leaning even more on R1 zones and what can be allowed in a what has commonly been a one-family residential unit as defined under the law. But you can go through it. In an R1, it can't be bigger than, I think, 800 square feet, and it talks about that as a permitted use. It does provide that you have to add parking space for each ADU that you have. It talks about no more than 2 bedrooms. Talks about how big the setbacks are and the parking has to be. But for purposes of today, until we get down, I suppose, to crafting our code, and I don't know if we want to look at other cities and towns that have dealt with this. Most of them have not. Suffice it to say that state code is the law of the land right now, and it essentially tells us what we must do and what we cannot prohibit. And so here's just one example to look at in your spare time with respect to what one city has done in responding to the legislature's amendment of the Utah state code. Questions?
I was just gonna reiterate, because while you were handing this out, we could hear you. I was just gonna, for people who are watching online, that you handed out the Cedar City
Yes.
ordinances that mention the ADU.
Yes, and essentially what Cedar City did was take the state code and apply it to their
So this is after the change to the state code, this is what they
Yeah.
did.
Yeah.
Can we restrict them to, under this, because the state allows us to restrict certain things. Is square footage one of the things that we can restrict?
We cannot restrict what the state code allows, what the state code.
But I don't I don't remember it saying anything about square footage, so maybe Cedar City
That's what I'm wondering.
took
Because they
it as
said
one
you
of the
have to allow it,
restrictions.
but here are some of the restrictions you can put on it. I just don't remember square
I
footage.
don't remember
being one of
square footage either, so I wonder if Cedar City's
them. Stepping out into the.
said, okay, there isn't a restriction, but we would like to minimize it to 800 square feet.
Yeah, I don't.
I don't know, I'd have to look at it side by side. But I don't remember at the state code level saying that there was a minimum or maximum when it came to
Yeah,
square
I don't-
footage. So that might be, we're one of those levers that you can adjust.
Yeah, I would go back and look at the code, but for example, I don't think if you had a 2,500 square foot home that you could put in a 3,000 square foot,
I just noticed, it's restricting ADUs,
ADU, yeah.
not IADUs.
ADUs.
It's
Oh.
restricting external additional dwelling units to 800 square
Right.
feet.
But it talks about, IADUs or ADUs as well.
Yeah,
Right,
it
so-
says 1,200 on the.
So I thought maybe they were getting in trouble with restricting IADUs to 800, but they're not.
Oh, okay.
They're restricting ADUs to, 'cause they're allowing ADUs, which we currently don't do, but they're allowing
Yes.
it and restricting.
And we have to, as I interpret the law as well. It's just what restrictions can we put on them in Parowan and still be, acceptable under the language and intent of the state code.
Thank you, Scott, for bringing this. Does anybody else have any questions at this time or discussion that they wanted to continue to have at this time?
I shouldn't say this, but I just gotta point out, in 16, they are saying external accessory dwelling units with a separate address which are no greater than 800 square feet, and it goes on. Then on the next page, on number 8, it says building size requirements. The ground floor area of any one family dwelling shall not be less than 1,000 square feet.
Yeah,
Maybe that's just the primary dwelling,
I think that's probably,
but it just seems to be a little contradictory. I'm sure maybe it doesn't, it's just me reading it that way, but.
so you could have in that case, 800 and a 200 separate square footage living areas. Okay. That'll be I'll enjoy reading that later.
I guess maybe I would just add that I would think that as we're contemplating IADUs, that we ought to spend some of that same brain time thinking about, do we want to allow ADUs, external, and under what circumstances? Or not, but I still think that in an R2 zone, for somebody to add a mother-in-law casita or apartment in the back is within the spirit of what an R2 zone is, but our code currently says building, not buildings, when it says R2. So basically, our code, if you interpret it very literally, the only thing you could ever put in an R2 zone would be a duplex. That's a combined building. So it's just something to,
I just think it's a very creative
for
way
thought.
of the state, talking about how to, for lack of a better description, put more people into a home. You could go to the R1 definition, which talks about, the level of relationship that has to be with the people that live there. So, you have to be related and meet the requirements of a residential one, a home dwelling. But instead of saying, and you could expand the R1 and say, okay, now you can rent out rooms within your house in an R1. But instead of saying that, which may be more criticism, they're saying, oh, let's call this an internal accessory dwelling unit, whatever that is, which to me is the same thing as renting out a bedroom to a college kid. I mean, whatever you wanna call it. And you have to get a rental, license, you have to get a business license, you're now a landlord, and you have to, add a parking space for each bedroom, but I don't know, 6 of one, a half dozen of the other, they just call it something different, to me.
I was just making sure, I was just looking back, looked like there wasn't anything more to say tonight.
Complicated.
Oh, yes, definitely complicated. Okay,
There's plenty to say, but there's a different forum for it, so. This body can't make ordinances, they can make recommendations, but, the state is trying to impose a blanket remedy for a problem that they think they can resolve by forcing cities to implement these things, and that's not the way you deal with the integrity of and characteristics of individual communities.
And Dave is putting his money where his mouth is. He's joining a legislative advocacy group to represent rural areas.
Oh, really?
Not your money, your time.
Yeah. It's, the pay is to be debatable.
okay, well, if there isn't anything else to discuss on that topic this evening, I would say that we should move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the appointment of planning and zoning members. Oops. So I believe,
Is that what you're looking for?
yeah, I was just looking for it on my phone. You have it printed out for me?
Well, for me, but you
Well,
can borrow it.
you'll share with me, thank you, I appreciate that. So, the code that we currently have,
It's on their back.
is it on the back?
Uh-huh.
Oh, and look, you conserved, thank you.
Conserve paper, save a
Save a tree.
eat a beaver. Oh, he didn't say that.
So, the commission is, set up under, our code 151610. I'm watching what you're doing.
It just wouldn't let me copy and paste.
Yep, no problem.
Pasted it on there.
So, we need to consist of 5 members, and they're each appointed by the mayor, which I believe everyone, including alternates, have been, approved by, our mayor.
Well, she recommends it has to be,
No, it's city council, thank you. Yes,
Yeah.
you are correct. She recommended and the city council approved.
what's the term, Dan? It's a,
Advice and consent.
advice.
With advice and consent of the city council.
Yes.
Yes, and so, currently, we are, Larry, who has been appointed as our chair, Jerry, sorry, do I need to say last names? Vesley, myself, Heather Pete, and I have always been considered an alternate. And I believe, Jamie, I know at one point you were considered an alternate, are you?
No, I was never voted
No,
as an
she was-
alternate.
No? Oh, okay, okay, so, and then, Tony and Weston as well as alternates. So, I know that this is on the agenda, but I don't know.
I'm guessing Larry put it on the agenda to discuss, we've talked about, getting a little bit more official with all of our committees on the terms and keeping track of when they expire and either reappointing them or appointing somebody new if there's interest and so forth and so on. By the way, our code doesn't mention alternates at all. It just says 5 members, so we actually have appointed more members to this body and to historic preservation because we've appointed alternates. The reason why I think we appointed alternates is because there's business that this board has to do all the time. We don't wanna not have a meeting for lack of a quorum, so by putting some alternates in. But it doesn't actually say anywhere in our code about alternates. Also, I also wanted to clarify, it says reappointed, that Larry was reappointed by the mayor as planning and zoning for a 5-year term. There's no such thing as a 5-year term, they're 4-year terms. You're appointed to the commission, and then the commission shall select a chairperson and a chair pro tem from among its members. The term shall be 1 year. That's why Larry, at the first of this year, said we need to appoint a chair again. So this is your own body electing who you want to be your own chair. But Larry is a member just like everybody else. You elect him to be your chair for a year, and then you would re-elect him. But he technically himself has a 4-year term. He served before as a member, and then he was reappointed for another term in 22 for 4 more years.
Right.
And so, but right now we currently have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 for a 5-person committee. I was going to ask the question, does the city council designate alternates or not, but technically it doesn't even call it anything.
The city council has always voted on alternates and members.
I know, they've kinda done that, and that's kind of been a procedure. It's not really supported in code. I don't know if that's probably a problem. I think it's probably fine. The question is, that I have, right now we have 3 full-time members and 3 alternates. We probably ought to designate 5 full-time members at a minimum and have a single alternate.
I know that one of the things Larry had, brought up or had mentioned to me was to talk to, and to bring up to Tony and Weston, if we could, for efficiency's sake, have one of you say, like, the first meeting of the month is my responsibility, and then the third week, the second meeting of the month would be the other person's. Like, that you would make that kind of, commitment. Obviously, if things come up just like with any of us, where you're like, I can't come, or I need to, then, reach out to Larry and say, I'm not gonna be able to make it. But that way, it's,
But we need a,
if they're not alternates, they're actually on the board.
yeah,
They should
we actually need a board
Well, we
member,
have
not
6
2 alternates. We need an actual person that's,
I think if you had 5 that
Okay,
were
so
board members,
yeah,
that were
or,
commissioners,
and then 1 alternate.
that was their job, and if they can't come, the alternate acts like a substitute.
Yeah,
Right.
oh,
Right.
I know that was what I, and I didn't know any terms when I was asked to participate as well. That was what it was. I'm an alternate, and if they need me,
Right.
they will contact me and let me know, so it's not something that, like,
Not
if
mandatory
one, it's
attendance
not mandatory
Yeah.
attendance every time.
Unless you need it.
If you, if,
Sure.
Jamie's gone,
Okay.
she'll reach out to me and say, hey, I need a sub, basically, can you attend?
so, then if we're not, and then the question would be, Weston, are you willing to make a full-time commitment? And then if neither of you are, then we need the mayor to then bring a 5th person, because we have 6, but,
We have
Yeah.
3.
We have 3.
Yeah.
we have,
We have 3 full-time. How do you
oh,
feel,
well,
Heather? Do you-
okay, I'm here all the time. I consider myself a full-time.
Okay, so that's how you feel. I think what we'll do is we'll have the mayor reappoint a full-time members. You're good to do it full-time?
Yeah.
Full-time. What about the 2 of you guys?
I'm not personally,
Okay, then that's fine. Then, yeah, that's fine.
So you'd rather stay as an alternate?
Yes.
Weston?
How long are we obligated?
4 years, starting from September 8th, 2022. That means 2026.
I would have the choice to resign, right?
Well, you can always resign. These are volunteer positions.
Never.
I was like,
Ball and chain for the next,
I never even knew it was 4 years.
It is a sacrifice. I'm glad you said that, 'cause let's realize that this is a
flogging?
sacrifice. There's no flogging. There's also no pay.
Okay. Yeah, I can do it.
Think about the paycheck you're getting though. Huge.
So if we went back to the mayor and said, would you feel comfortable appointing Heather as full-time, Weston as full-time, leaving Tony as an alternate. We'll have the council approve and consent, advice and consent. You guys would be okay with that?
Mhm.
'Cause I think that it would be the council would be the appropriate body to do that action.
And would you want another alternate? 'Cause I know they've always had two alternates,
Yeah.
or would that just be
I
something?
would,
I don't think it's a bad idea.
I think it's a good,
I
better
think it's a
idea
good
to have
idea
two
too.
alternates.
Right, just in
'Cause
case
Jamie has
Tony's
her
not
moment.
available, then we can still bring in the second alternate.
Yeah. I mean, technically, you
That's
can
why I
have this
appointed
meeting with
Weston as an
three.
alternate.
I mean, you have a quorum with three.
Yeah,
So it's not the end of the world if you only had 3 or 4 people here, but
I just.
Yeah, all the other committees have, well, most, not all, but they have quorum, they have 5 committee members, and they only you have to have 3 to make a quorum.
somehow economic development turned into more than that. But yeah.
Mhm.
Well,
Well, I think that Shade Tree did too.
in this parliamentary procedure, right, they need 3 quorum members to run, even if they were other alternates or other ones, they still need the majority, so if
Yeah.
Yeah,
two
you
that are on
have,
the
you need
committee, they just need 3,
to
and they're the
have a
ones that
quorum.
should be voting.
And the
Even-
real
even an
question is if
alternate
you only
doesn't
have
have
3,
to
what happens
vote.
when you have a 2-to-1 vote?
It-
Right?
I've never
Anyway.
seen that.
We're fixing that.
But, yeah, you have a total committee of 5, and so you have to have the quorum has to be consisting of 3.
Awesome.
Has to be what, David? 3?
3,
Yeah, right.
'cause theoretically, you're gonna have an odd vote, but, yeah.
No.
No.
So basically, we're just gonna add Heather and Weston on as
No,
full-time.
no, actually, hang
And
on.
then grab an alternate.
Hang on, Dave is a member of the committee. 'Cause let's read it.
He can't vote.
Can't vote.
Dave can't vote.
I'm not saying that's what's in the ordinance, I'm saying that's what the council had determined.
I know, and you're right. But what is in the ordinance is it says it shall consist of 5 members. I'm gonna skip a little bit. At least 3 of them shall hold no other public office or position with the city of Parowan.
Right.
The Parowan City Council shall appoint a representative from among its members to act as liaison between the Parowan City Council and the Parowan City Planning Commission.
So they're just a liaison, not a voting member.
Yeah.
So they are not a member of the committee, they're just a liaison.
Mhm.
Yep, I concur. It's, I've looked through all of them because they just redid the assignments.
Yeah.
In some cases, they are a voting member, but you're right, planning commission, it's not. That's correct.
Sweet.
Sorry.
Awesome.
So we have Heather full-time, we have, Weston full-time, and we have Tony as an alternate, and we'll ask the mayor to, or at least, we'll say that that's what you're willing to do, and I think we're all good. Anybody who's willing to serve, and as long as you're not dysfunctional, we're happy to have you.
Can we ask her to give us another alternate too as well?
Oh, and I'll ask for another alternate.
Yeah, we have
Yeah.
to.
Yeah.
Can we give a name?
Yeah, suggest it to the mayor, anybody can volunteer or something, so yeah.
Tracy Wheeler would be a name I would,
I know that it is a lot on Molly to make appointments, so anytime she has suggestions that are good, she appreciates it.
I just have spoken to her about it and she has, expressed interest.
I think Suzanne Leidsman would be great. Both of you.
That'd be the death of us.
Both of you guys alternates.
I don't know if there's any action to take, but.
Yeah,
No.
well, I think,
No, 'cause it has to be a recommendation by
Yeah.
the mayor and
Right.
the vice or.
I think it's important. A lot of times people think that committees have like a say in who gets appointed and approving them or something. That's not a thing.
At some point, we probably should get back to where we stagger them too, 'cause they're all 2022, and I think it's.
Oh, yeah. it
We
says
definitely
not more
need
than 2,
You're
Mhm.
and it's all of us.
And the other thing, the one other thing that it does say, and it's not in the part that's on the list, is that those 3 of the 5, no, the 5 shall be residents of Parowan City and, they shall not consist, all of whom are from the same field of expertise. They really wanna have different
Yeah.
viewpoints,
Oh, yeah,
and so that's just something to think about as we're
Right.
coming up with people.
do you have a question? If they're, when you talked about staggering, if they, because they would be changing, like for Heather and Weston, would that re-up their
I've been here longer.
appointment contract?
I think that we need to actually designate as they reappoint, that they're going to be, from their point of, appointment, a 4-year, 2-year. We're gonna try and do this with all the committees and get them properly staggered with the terms. So if you have strong feelings one way or the other, maybe reach out to the mayor and say, I'd rather be 2 years. Actually, if it was 2 years from 2022,
I'd
that's
be done.
now.
This
I mean,
year.
Jerry Vesely, that's Valentine's Day, right around the
I'd
corner.
be done.
But, there's nothing to say that they couldn't be reappointed, so if they stagger them and you're interested in another 4 years from that date, then it would essentially start from now anyway, so. Maybe reach out to the mayor and tell her how you feel about your own appointment.
Okay. Anything else on that before we move on to member reports?
No, what I can say, I guess, is that this is a very important committee. I mean, I think we all know that. This is the lifeblood of this city is not only city council, but this committee right here. And that, I think we actively need to consider other names that we may know of, the people that have same feelings about, our city and how we continue to move forward. Anyway, that's it. I enjoy being here and I look forward to moving forward.
Well, and the ordinance does allude to the fact that, the idea that the committee should be diverse,
Yes,
Mhm.
absolutely.
totally diverse.
Right.
And so, and it isn't the council that decided that the council member doesn't vote, it is ordinance.
Mhm.
Yeah, I misspoke on that.
Okay. I guess we'll start here. Any reports?
Just wanted to follow through, the council did approve the recommendation to hire a Hanson Planning Group to do our subdivision code. And Molly has executed that MOU. I've asked for a start date from them. In their process, they'll involve this body towards the, kind of the tail end. So, just wanted to bring that feedback back, since you guys made a positive recommendation, so. And that's all I have.
Tony?
Nothing from me.
Weston?
Nope.
Okay. Jerry?
Nothing from me?
Jamie?
Nothing.
Dave?
No, thank you.
Okay.
And Heather Pete?
I do not have anything this evening either. So we are at that glorious time where I normally get to jump right on it, but I can't tonight. So who else would like to?
I make a motion, we adjourn.
And do you have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right.
Slam that
Oh, and I
gavel
guess
down,
I
Phil.
should, the only other, it's not a report, but I should apologize. I feel very horrible that I was so late. I was with a plumber and construction